Please can you remind me, if you'll be so kind, staring out into space, asking God to hear my case, trying to think of all things past. How long will my memory last? The purple angel, purple angel, purple angel, you're next to me.
Well, hi everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I am your host and founder of Alzheimer Speaks, Lori LeBay, and we created Alzheimer Speaks due to the journey I had with my own mother living with the disease for 30 years. For those of you that are new to our show, Alzheimer Speaks is an advocacy-based company providing multiple platforms to shift our dementia care culture from crisis to comfort around the world. We also help companies expand their brand footprint by leveraging our content to increase access for products and services and tools to those in need. And I also really need to thank our audience. You guys are so loyal and so committed to us. I just appreciate that. And I want you to know how important what your likes and clicks and shares and your influence has done. You see, we truly believe that collaboration is the only way we're going to win this battle against dementia. And I know it's working because of you, we were recognized by Oprah as a health hero for 2018, by Maria Shriver as an architect of change, and Dr. Oz as the #1 influencer online for Alzheimer's. And we didn't do that. You guys did that. You did that by being part of the community and sharing the content and, being interviewed either on video or radio or writing into the blog. And again, for that, I can't thank you enough, because I truly believe this grassroots effort is going to make a difference in the world and help not only families and people diagnosed with the disease, but professionals meet the needs quicker, easier, and faster by having these open-ended conversations. Now, before I start today, we are going to have a great conversation with Jay Benedict, but I always like to give a shout out to a couple of organizations. And the first one I want to give a shout out to today is Care to Plan. They are developing a dementia resource directory. It's in beta testing right now. You can actually go to alzheimerspeaks.com and go to our resource tab to get more information on that. It's going to be phenomenal. I, as a daughter who cared for her mom, it was something I greatly wanted, to go to a safe place where I could get great information and be able to find it and share it with others. So you can go learn, again, more about that at alzheimerspeaks.com on our resource directory tab. The other is Maria Shriver's Women's Alzheimer's Movement, which is known as WAM. Every year in June, she has been doing an event called Move for Minds, which is a combination of exercise and nutrition and panelists. It's really a fun day, but look for more information on that, or you can just go to the Women's Alzheimer's Movement.org. She also has a fantastic weekly newsletter called, I want to say it's called the Sunday Paper. If you're looking for something uplifting, she is one of the most authentic people I've ever met, and she loves to see the power of one and what people are doing all around the world. And it's fascinating. It's a great way to start your Sunday. And last, I'm going to give a shout out to the American Senior Magazine. They have a great magazine that comes out, I believe it's quarterly, and it's a lifestyle magazine for the senior population with topics ranging from nostalgia to health and wellness, some wonderful interviews, and some spotlights on some notable older Americans. And I love it too because it has large print and I don't even need my glasses to read it. So check them out. You can go to our website on our homepage too and get a discount for a subscription. Or if you're a community, they'd be more than glad to talk with you as well and see what they can set up with you there. So with no further ado, we are going to talk with Jay Benedict today. Now, Jay is an outreach and sales director for Cherrywood Pointe here in Roseville, Minnesota. And he's right off of Lexington. And he has been serving seniors for 3 years. In 2015, he created a program called Connections, which is a unique support group for caregivers that meets monthly. And he is also part of a volunteer group that I also work with, the Roseville Alzheimer's and Dementia Community Action Team. And he has been with us for 3 years on that as well. And we are all about, trying to create a better community for those living with dementia, or what a lot of people call dementia-friendly communities. So welcome, Jay. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me, Lori.
Well, I'm excited to have you. You're just a little go-getter, and I've been really impressed. I didn't really know Jay until the Roseville AD group, and he's just been really a precious member with great insight and just kind of this get up and let's get her done. When he jumps on the ball. And that is so refreshing and fun to see. So much, much appreciated. I wanted to talk first about your Connections program because it is unique. And, what are you doing different to serve the older adults and the seniors and caregivers in your community within Cherrywood Pointe and then outside, just the regular Roseville community? What's the Connections all about?
Perfect. So like you said, in 2015, I was our sales director over at our Cleveland location. And one of the tasks they bestowed upon me is leading our support group. And it was such a natural fit for me because prior to coming on as a sales director here at our Cherrywood Pointe, I was actually a funeral director and had a lot of training in that transition, loss, and grief. And I'm also a grief group supporter training too. So I can do different groups of support. And one thing I said, this is great. We're going to have a support group for the caregivers. Many communities do. However, we were sitting there and we were talking about what one of the biggest challenges were for that specific caregiver for the month. And he said, it was really tough because my wife forgot my birthday. And she looked at him and said, I did? And it was just an awkward, tender, sad moment full of just sadness. And it was when I had my big aha moment and said, no, we need a separation to care for the caregivers and the care receivers. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of scrapped how we were doing it totally, because before we would all meet together and then we now meet separately. And so once a month, I lead our support group for caregivers, and then our activities director leads a support group for persons with dementia. And so we can have those open and honest conversations. But yet the biggest challenge for many care receivers or caregivers is, what am I going to do with my spouse or my loved one while I'm receiving that training or that support? And so we've been able to really connect and offer a different approach to that support group. And it's been huge. So monthly we meet. Typically we have between 12 and 15 caregivers in our community. It's open to everyone in the community, but just have a great and rich conversation where I think those caregivers can be honest and open much more than they can with that spouse sitting right next to them as well.
Now, when you split them apart, do you split them apart at 2 different times, or are these just 2 totally different events?
No, so it's at the same time. So then families can certainly feel free to bring in the person with dementia. And so they have an activities in another room. So they get the treats and the goodies, and then they get to do activities that are geared specifically for persons with dementia as well. Okay. In an hour-long support group. So
now, with your people with dementia, are they in a certain stage, or are they in varied stages?
They're in varied stages. Our main focus is to be a support group for all. And so we have some members who have their spouses in a memory care, not even necessarily here. But then we have people who are living at home on their own. And then, some of our current residents. So it's a really kind of a neat blend. And I think that's what makes a support group so rewarding, or that they can have some really good take-home points, is we have people who are on very different points in their journey. So then they can ask that question of, how did you decide to make that move? Or how can I stay at home longer? Or my husband just got diagnosed with dementia. What does that mean for me? Or I just lost my mom. Can anyone else talk about that? So it's really fun to see from, early diagnosis to after someone has passed away.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it's important too, one of the things that it sounds like you're talking about that I think is really critical is to get people to understand that they can always help out somebody else. They're always 10 steps ahead of someone else, even though they might be 10 steps behind. And I think that that's just a really powerful concept, because sometimes we can go down the rabbit hole and think we don't know all the answers, and we forget about how much we've learned on our journey and how much knowledge that we really have. And, it always feels good to help somebody else out. And so that's a lifting process when you feel like you're connecting and are supportive, and then know, on the other hand, that they'll be there to catch you and support you and lift you when you're in need as well.
Exactly. And I think it's also for reassurance that being a caregiver is tough, but even feeling you're doing an adequate job, that is enough for today. And so we just had talked about that at our last support group. That was kind of what our main discussion revolved around, is people thinking, I'm not good enough anymore for this. I'm not doing this care receiver justice anymore. And so it's just kind of reassure people that just doing their best is what is all that's asked of a caregiver, and finding those resources out there. So I think too often that caregivers forget to acknowledge that it is a gift of what they're giving that care receiver, even if it doesn't seem like some days is just the best shot at it.
Yeah. Well, in realizing that it's not always about doing something, it's about being present. And how I explain it is, the caregiver, care partner, care companion, whatever you want to call them, carers as they do over in the UK. Sometimes, your biggest gift is doing nothing and just being there as their security blanket, because you're their warm fuzzy. And it makes them feel safe. And I think so often we overlook the importance of that, and how much peace that can bring a person with dementia, or anybody, having a tough time. I don't care if it's a child, if it's a friend, if it's whatever, but just being there so that they're not alone. Not always having to fix, because this isn't something we can fix or get rid of.
Well, and I think.
Oh, go ahead.
I think we see that a lot in our memory care community too, where families will come in and they'll say, I don't know what to say to mom anymore. She can't talk to me. And it's like, why do you have to say anything? We're just happy you're here. And we see that person just be still and really find joy in just that presence. So I think you're absolutely right in finding that connection of just time together is oftentimes enough to be with them.
Yeah. Well, and teaching families too that communication isn't all verbal. And it seems like when the verbal skills start to go, we press for that even more, for that person with dementia to speak to us in a full, comprehensive sentence. And yet, 3/4 of our communication is nonverbal. And we're not paying attention to that. We get focused on what has changed and what we feel we've lost, versus all this nonverbal communication still exists. And I personally believe, and I've talked with several other professionals in the industry that are in tune with this as well, believe that a person with dementia's ability to kind of tap into that sixth sense to read those nonverbals is heightened. because
I
just
think so.
someone who is blind, other senses come into play. And so I think it's really our duty as professionals to have conversations about that, show examples of that, lead by example, of tapping into that kind of emotional bliss, because that's where they're going to find comfort, and teaching people too to take pleasure and absorb the contentment when their person with dementia is peaceful, when they are content, when they are happy. And sometimes we're so busy zipping around, we don't like just take a breath and take it in and go, life is good. Life is good, And I was right there, I know, with my own mom. I was running around with my checklist of things to do, got stuff to do. And as a caregiver, it makes you feel important, checking those things off. And then pretty soon, all of a sudden, for me, I looked and I went, oh my God, I'm all task oriented, and I'm not focusing on my relationship. And then, I had to totally switch that. But it's interesting, I think, in the groups like that you've got with your connections, where those authentic conversations just come to be. And, when someone's having a bad day, or maybe says something that might not be in the perfect, realm, they'll support them and go, I get that, but, maybe if you can tweak it to this,
right.
Maybe it'll be.
And a lot of times too, I'm not finding that I'm really ever giving advice or leading the group. I essentially get the coffee ready and let the conversation just happen.
Yeah.
Because they are the ones who can connect with each other and give that real-time advice. I've not been a care partner for a spouse that's had dementia. Very different as a grandson versus, a spouse or a child. And so I think it's just important to create that space where caregivers can come together.
Yeah. Well, and I love that, because then you're not there fixing them or preaching to them, you're letting the group work together, which builds their sense of camaraderie quicker and faster and stronger, by tapping into the group resources. And that's just such I don't know, as a facilitator, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I just feel it's such an honor to witness that happening.
Yes.
Because so often, even when I get together with friends and stuff, not all conversations are really authentic. There still can be a lot of fluff and hidden agendas, and all that kind of stuff can be going on, with colleagues, and even very good friends aren't comfortable having, really raw, honest conversations, or even expressing emotion. And when you create that safe environment, those ties and those bonds become so strong, because it's such a rare environment for them to have.
Yes. And we saw that too. So a lot of our members actually moved in when we opened up here last August. And so their friends are here now, and those are real companions. So even now we have that friendship that's really formed outside of that support group, or they have those resources. And so they bond and do a lot of activities together beyond just that support hour. So that's been really fun to see that too.
Well, that's neat. Now, what types of things do your people with dementia do as far as activities? Can you give us some examples when the care partners gather, what the people with dementia are doing?
Yeah, so a lot of times too, we'll bring in different music programs or trivia questions, different board games, things like that. Going to the park together on the bus is coming up now that the weather is nice. So different activities, art projects, really getting a sense from the care partners. What do we think that they would enjoy? So it's been fun. And honestly, a lot of times too, it's the same, where they just want to get together and chat. And so we'll throw out a get to know you question, and the conversation, from what I hear, has just really taken off. And so kind of fun too to see, I actually think the ones who are more concerned are those caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
because they're like worried, oh no, what's my husband doing without me there? And then after our support group, we're like, okay, we better, hurry up and go get him. And we'll come in and the room is laughing, and it's just fun to see that they
Mm-hmm.
do have that camaraderie together, in that connection. So it's really been fun. I'm so proud of the program. I'm so proud that Ebenezer has let me develop that program and really take it off. So it's been fun.
Well, and that is very cool. And I think it is funny because, the care partners are worried about their person and how are they going to be. And yet, as a facilitator, you can lean back and go, you know what? Nobody wants to be tied to anybody 24/7, and both sides need a break.
Exactly.
in a safe environment, and then they can both come back a little refreshed with different things to share in terms of what it is that they've done. And so, well, kudos for you. And those are, I believe your connections group is listed on the Roseville AD website, which is located within the city of Roseville in Minnesota, the city site. So if you
absolutely
go to the
and it's open to all. And we're here on the fourth Wednesday of every month at 3:00. So we'd love to have others join us if they're interested. We do try to maintain it down to no more than about 12 members, just because at that point you lose some of that intimacy. So we'd always ask, if you're going to come, just give us a call and we'll make sure we have some room available as well.
Okay, great. Now, are you working on some other projects as well, Jay?
I am. So part of our community development and plan here is to be a strong pillar in the community, especially towards that memory care. And so I'm actually working on a project here with our local fire department where we're going to do specific memory care training on an ongoing basis. So we're very excited to develop that partnership. And we actually have our first program in the early parts of May, when we are going to do a dementia simulation for all of the fire departments here in Roseville. So it's very exciting to have that training coming on. And then we'll do an ongoing volunteer program with them. So they'll be coming in and volunteering in our memory care, which I think will only enhance what they're doing in the community at large for dementia residents, helping to understand what those residents are going through as part of that journey and care from the fire department standpoint. So very excited about that program that we have, and we're putting a lot of time and energy into that too. So awesome.
Oh, very fun. Now, with the virtual tour, is that something specific and trademarked by Ebenezer, or is that one of the other programs that's out there for the?
Nope. We developed our own program. And so there's, several different that are similar, but it just helps to take away from the senses. And so we have the visual, the hand sensors. We put neuropathy reenactments in their shoes. And so it just helps them to do that. I've actually gone through our training a couple of times, and each time I just blown away by oh my gosh, if that's what it's like to live 24/7, I understand where a lot of these behaviors come from and that frustration. And so I think that I've become just a lot more tender to the memory care residents and understanding of, a small part of what they would be going through. So it's just a really great, powerful tool too. So I'm very excited to bring that to the different community groups. And we're actually going to be doing it as well. So at the same time, because it takes quite a bit to set up, you have to set up an apartment for it. We're going to also be doing it for the care partners of the Connections support group. So they're going to be able to kind of step in those shoes of their loved ones for a little bit and hopefully have some aha moments as well. So very excited.
Oh, cool. Well, if you ever do it for the public, let me know, because I'd love to see what your program is like. I find them very powerful, and
absolutely.
Like you said, it puts you in a whole different space going, holy cow, really? This is how difficult things can be.
Yeah. Well, and the headphones alone are so discombobulating. And I'm like, I can't keep a thought straight. And we'll give 5 tasks to do within the 10 minutes in the apartment. And you can't remember past the second or third one. And so you're like, oh my gosh, now what do I need to do? And that's a common question we see with our residents here. What do I need to do? What am I late? And so they just ask a lot of those questions, and it's like, okay, simplifying that explanation is
Yeah.
so important to those residents. So it's just
Yeah.
fun. We're doing it on our staff as well. So it's a whole 3-day training. 1 day is specific to our staff. One's going to be the Connections Support Group, and all 3 are going to be the fire department because we're doing it for all 3 shifts. So all of the fire team here in Roseville will have gone through that training, and as part of that, we're doing the de-escalation training as well. What we've learned about that. So I'm excited, and we'll report back.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Now, you also worked with the library, with the Roseville and Shoreview Library in Ramsey County to put together memory minder kits. Can you tell our audience a little bit about what inspired that that concept, and then why you guys chose to get involved, and what you've seen as the effects of that?
Yes. And so as part of our group, so we meet monthly, the Roseville Alzheimer's and Dementia group. And I think that it's safe to say Roseville is one of the very best communities to live in with dementia. We've just done a ton of community development programs. And so it's exciting to see from having a business here in Roseville, how do we become stronger partners and support that mission? Because ultimately it is a mission for us to provide care, and we're just a small part of that big puzzle to fighting dementia. And so one of the things that we do is when we can partner with those different groups, such as the fire department or here with the library, we are honored and we jump on those missions. And so one of those things that we developed was with the Roseville and Shoreview library systems called the Memory Minder Kits. And this was kind of one of those ideas that it took a lot of brains to come together, and all of a sudden it was this aha moment of why isn't this being done? And so we got this kit, and so we use a lot of memory care focused materials in there. We have the Caregiver's Guide to Caregiving in every one of our kits. It's a book, just a black and white version of the nuts and bolts to caregiving. And so we feel strongly about that support of that book. And so Carol Jackson then said the next big question is how do I raise the funds for this? Because it's expensive to put these kits together. And I think Ebenezer and other area assisted living groups thought the value was sure there. And so we each contributed quite a bit of sum of money. There was 5 of us that came together, and we raised over $5,000 to develop and buy the materials for these kits. And so now in the Roseville Shoreview library system, there are 60 kits that are all different levels, low, medium, and high functioning. And families can check them out for 3 weeks. And a lot of times it is just a great activity to get together. There's music in each of the kits, kind of replicating the idea of those children's kits that you can take home, the book and the activity, but it's specifically for dementia. And so it's fun to see, residents here using them and caregivers and going, this one really worked, or no, this one wasn't as impactful. And so it's just fun to see how they are a benefit. There's literature on there for the tons of resources that are out in the Roseville community and the community of memory care as a whole. So we're just really getting tangible material into the hands of those caregiving. So.
Yeah. And it's, I know with our Memory Cafe people and others, they really have liked these kits. They found them extremely helpful. And I know Carol had said that, it's hard to get one. You almost have to reserve them. They're out all the time. And
so when we reapproached it, we now were a year in, and due to the success of these kits, we said they only need some more. And so we are now funding another 60 kits to be available at all Ramsey County libraries. And those kits are also going to focus on the Lewy body dementia. So we're expanding our products, the Lewy body dementia and children's programming for helping care for grandpa and grandma and understanding. So very excited about the new addition to the Memory Minders line.
Oh, very cool. That's exciting. When I go around the country, I always, talk about that, and people are kind of amazed, but really highly interested in what's going on. And how they can get involved with that as well. Now, I also wanted to talk to you about, how Ebenezer has kind of positioned themselves as a leader in memory care. And we've gone over, several things with, the projects that we've talked about, the connections and the memory minders, and your training in terms of getting involved with dementia-friendly communities. But let's talk about that a little bit more specifically. Is your community and Roseville a little unique, or is this something that Ebenezer wants to do in all areas? Because they're all over the place.
Yeah, it is not just unique to Roseville here. It's in any of our Ebenezer managed sites. So we've done some programming just clearly across the board. And one of those huge developments was what we call our dimensions. That's what we call our memory care program. And we have Mary Sue Moses, who oversees that very unique center person dementia care for all of our Ebenezer residents. And so from the get-go, any of our staff who are Ebenezer trained go through a program upon orientation. So from your high executives to your frontline staff, everybody that the resident would ever encounter has had that dementia background and training. And on ongoing monthly, we do a hot topic once a month at every site. And so there's this ongoing hour training as well. So it's really fun. And then we have our memory care champions. And so instead of one person going to all of the sites, we go to the training center, and then she will bring it back to us here and train the staff on an ongoing basis. So it's been really fun to see Ebenezer's commitment to that memory care.
Okay, wonderful. Well, that's great for people to know. And then last, how do you help families who are trying to make that decision to maybe move a loved one into a memory care community? I know that can be a huge struggle for a lot of families, but yet there can be such great relief and satisfaction in terms of getting through that process and actually doing it. How do you guys help families through that?
Yes. As the sales director here, I would say that is going to be one of the toughest decisions any of our families have to make, is ultimately bringing, somebody they love into our care here. And it's been great having that loss and grief and transition background that I have had as a funeral director to apply a lot of that same principle into training our staff to really support that family on that transition, because it is ultimately one of our toughest moves that we have here. Really inviting that family in for care conferences. We also do what's called the My Way programming, and it's understanding how do we replicate their day-to-day lives into our memory care, into a setting that is familiar to them. And so it's, asking those specific questions of when they wanted to take a bath. Is that a morning, noon, night, sponge bath? There's just different levels of care that we can provide those residents. But the other big thing is supporting that family. And so we do follow up with them, inviting them into our care support groups, ongoing monthly education and support as well. So.
Okay. Wonderful. Is that, do you find families can make that decision easily, or do you think it's really something over time that takes them a while to process?
Absolutely. I think it's a long process. We can ultimately see a lot of times, we're caring for that person, and we kind of know where we're headed, that eventually that care is going to be too difficult to do 24 hours in our own home, whether that's from an emotional standpoint or physical standpoint. Ultimately, I think that's the biggest trigger, is that physical need for care. And so to give that up and have somebody provide that 24/7 is the toughest. And a lot of times, we're working with families that are in crisis mode. Something happened at home where there's just no safe way anymore of being at home. And so working with families in an emergency, very fast pace, and not making sure those critical details get overlooked is part of my role here. I know that that's what we did with my own grandma too. We tried to carry in as long as possible, but ultimately we had to learn that caring for her also meant letting somebody else step in and help us where we just could not physically do it anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's you guys really have some nice, I think, resources to help people transition and through this process, because it is an ongoing one that shifts and changes quite a bit throughout the disease process itself. And family members come from so many different angles in terms of the move. And I know sometimes families are all on one page, and sometimes there's 10 of them all on a different page, and it can get complicated. Really,
we have here what we call our Weary Wives Club. It's a group of our spouses of these 5 wives that have gotten together because their husbands all live in our memory care, and so it's just fun to see this built-in like family support group too. And so they get together every night for supper and just have that constant support. So it's just been fun to see those true relationships take off as well.
Oh, very neat. Very neat. Now, are you guys looking at doing any more expanding in Roseville? I mean, you've got quite a few different communities just within the scope of Roseville, and then many, way outside as well. And
yeah. At this time, I'm not aware of any that are coming here to Roseville specifically. We are constantly opening, some new buildings and acquiring some old properties too that really think the Ebenezer model is the best. They've been doing it 100 years, so they're continually challenging and growing as well. So I don't know of any here in Roseville.
Okay. They do just a wonderful, wonderful job, and it's evident that you're a great fit for their community in terms of, one of the things that I like in terms of what you've done within Ebenezer is they've allowed you to use your creativity and really listen to the needs so that you serve. Because so many times I see, traveling around the country, I see so many models still where everybody thinks the hierarchy knows it all, and yet they are the furthest in contact with the everyday person that they're serving. And there can be such a disconnect on that.
Absolutely.
And I love...
Well, I think that's where we can really dive into the programs that are needed. For instance, we do an every other month continuing education event for our social workers and nurses within the community as a whole. And one of the really unique things that we did this month is because we heard from people, what about the spiritual care for those dementia? And I said, this is awesome. Let's pull together that panel of experts and talk about the spiritual changes. And so that's what we did last month. And that was primarily from a grassroots of what do we need and asking those questions. So it is fun to have that autonomy within such a great place.
Well, and that was a repeat event too, because you had such great success with that prior. Because it was an area that people really weren't addressing clearly and openly, and that is that's a huge factor. And I mean, there's studies to prove that stress is reduced when people are connected on a spiritual level. That it does.
And it's fun too then to be the resource for other communities too. They're calling and asking, hey, we want to do that. How do we get that rolling? And so it's fun that we're part of that and we can share those ideas.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty cool to be, and even though you're part of a large organization, a lot of what you're doing is really grassroots in my eyes.
Absolutely.
And that's that's kind of my niche. Let's do it hasn't been done before, and connect people. And I love, even just with this program, being able to raise the voice of what it is you're doing so that others can hear. The creativity and the benefits to what you're doing.
Oh, especially, and we want people to replicate that. And I think Carol Jackson over at the library too, with like the memory kit, she's getting calls all the time. What are these memory reminder kits? How do I get that? And so having that support and, showing them, hey, there's resources out there because of the expense, that don't let that kind of get in your way. And so it's just helping educate others to like get these ideas and grow and grow and grow.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and the library took on doing a memory cafe too, with a little different twist than, what my group is more like yours, where they sit around and talk and stuff. But, through the library, they were able to get a grant, if it was kind of arts and cultural based. And
Yeah.
so that's meeting a whole nother need. And I think one of the other things, and this was a really uphill battle in the beginning, that I noticed, because I wasn't in the, support group business per se. And then I got involved with the memory cafes, which has been almost 7 years now. And,
Wow.
when we first started those, there was such cliques and silos, and people did not want to work together. And there was this attitude of, well, they're my people and you can't have them. And now that has totally changed. And the various support groups are probably the biggest feeders for other support groups, because people have come to realize that, people's needs will change, but a lot of them like to participate in more than one. And they like meeting different people, and every group has its own dynamic, and they're all serving in different ways. And this is a good thing, because our goal really should be meeting their needs, not trying to, meet ours.
One, I think too, it's so important to finding those different resources that are going to be a good fit for that person individually. Because, some communities are bigger and they want that congregation. Some are smaller and more intimate. And so, you have that huge swing of things. But even like in my memory care, they'll come back and then bring me resources to share with those people. And then, a couple of those people might go, that music program is just what we needed this month. Or we're having a lawyer come in and chat. And I had some of my residents going over to a support group and announced it there. And I have some of their residents coming. So it is, I think, so imperative in the fight against dementia to share those resources so we can just continue to really build upon each other's success.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's one thing that the Roseville Community Action, Alzheimer's and Dementia Community Action Team has done really well, because the web portion on the city page is fairly stagnant, except for the activities and events and support groups. And there, instead of people reduplicating what someone's already done, we're telling people it's over here. We're going to do this, and we're sharing resources, and that is just so nice to see, because that was not happening, and in many communities around the country that still doesn't happen. But it changes everything when that true, authentic collaboration comes together, and people aren't fearful of losing a client. It's not about a sale. It's not about a number. It's about meeting the needs. And as we meet the needs, I think everybody gets busier, and we're doing a better job for the clients, those that we're serving. And that's a beautiful thing to be part of and to see. And very, very neat. Well, I so appreciate your time with us today. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover and tell our audience?
No, I think that's awesome. Finding places that are very supportive of a community as a whole is so important. I think, if you're ever looking for that community to place somebody, there's some great resources out there, EbenezerCares.org, Cherrywoodpointe.com. I'm always willing to answer some calls too. So reaching out, finding that support that you need, and taking care of yourselves.
Yep. And can you give those websites one more time, Jay?
Yeah, the main one for Ebenezer is EbenezerCares.org, and our website, Cherrywoodpointe.com.
Okay, wonderful. Well, that is fantastic. Again, so much appreciate your time with us today, and the work that you're doing and the work that your organization is doing. It's an honor to have you on the show today. So thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for all your work too.
Yeah. In closing, I'm just going to give a shout out to a couple other organizations. One is the Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation. They are located in Arizona, but there's so much information that you can glean from the internet. They have a holistic approach. They have a really cool training program for meditation, which has some proven research behind it, which is very neat. And you can just go to alzheimersprevention.org. And then I'd be amiss if I didn't mention Calendar Cards, who has a memory system. They also have provided and pulled together a directory for memory cafes. And you can access the Memory Cafe directory by just going to memorycafedirectory.com, memorycafedirectory.com. And if you have a memory cafe and you want it listed, just reach out to them. It's free. Dave is more than glad to enter it. We're approaching 500 of them now in the U.S., which is just incredible because that's all been grassroots effort. Another one that is really neat, if we have any restaurants that are listening or people that have influence with restaurants, there is an organization called the Purple Table Reservations. And you can get to them by just going to purpletables.com. But this gal out east, her mom had dementia. They had a restaurant, and they started gathering, doing a kind of a support group there. She now has an app put together and a training program that's very inexpensive for restaurants to get trained and get listed. And people can then call in and say, I'd like a purple table reservation, which basically just means give me a well-lit, quiet area with a wait staff who's not going to overwhelm me with 25, dressings and drinks and desserts and a menu that is a little simpler and knows how to communicate better. And that is, their target is not just dementia, but autism, post-traumatic stress. I mean, it'll work for a lot of people. I mean, I wouldn't mind it. I get overwhelmed when it's like, okay, how many dressings were there? How many? It's just, we've gotten to this point where we're bigger and more we think is better, and it isn't all the time. People just really want to connect and have a nice experience. And so purpletables.com is a really cool thing to go to. Last I talked to her, they had, I want to say 44 inquiries from 44 different states, but they didn't have that many restaurants signed up. This is something really brand new. And then the last I'm just going to mention is called the Call Alert Center. And it's a wonderful program for care partners who are worried that maybe their loved one or their client might wander off. And it's very economical, but it gets you all set up in case there would be a need. And then you contact them, they work with the police, and there's flyers and social media pieces and an alert that goes out to a phone system that is just very helpful in an initial crisis to help find that person. So again, I want to thank our audience. I want to thank Jay with Cherrywood Pointe for being our guest today. And feel free to check out all of our other resources on alzheimerspeaks.com. In the meantime, have a blessed week, and we'll talk soon, everyone. Bye now.
Hi, this is Suzanne Newman, host of the Answers for Elders podcast and radio show. We are the North Star that guides you through the complicated journey of senior care with trusted experts in money, law, living solutions, and more. So join us on this station, your favorite podcast channel, or just go to AnswersForElders.com. Meet the Wayshowers who will help your journey go a lot easier.